So today what we have to talk about is sampling. So last time we discussed what kind of questionnaires exist. Last time we also discussed what questions or what tools do we have, what different methods we can use in order to create a questionnaire. But this time we're going to look at how you can actually pull a sample, and the sample meaning those people who you will actually ask in the questionnaire. Before we start sampling, you have to be familiar with at least three basic concepts. The first concept or the first keyword that you have to learn is the population. The second is the sampling frame, and the third one is the sample itself. Well, the population involves all those people who are in your target group. Sometimes we call them target population, meaning that if you would like to ask people who have smartphones, probably of the usage of their smartphones, then your population involves all those people who have smartphones. But of course, out of this population, you don't have access to everyone, so you are not able to access everybody. Therefore, you have to determine a sampling frame. So that's the second keyword that you need. You have a certain sampling frame. And the sampling frame means that those people are in your sampling frame who you can actually reach. So people you can actually reach. And in the sample, those people will be included who you could reach from your population, so basically from your sampling frame, and finally volunteered to fill in your questionnaire. So this is the difference between the three basic concepts. There is also another one which is important for us, actually other three keywords that are very important for us. The first is representativeness, second one is reliability, and third one is validity. Well, what do they mean? Well, representativeness means that if you have a sample, it is representative only if it reflects upon your population, meaning that it has certain characteristics which is common to those of the population itself. So we can say that your sample is representative if the characteristics are that of the whole population. This sample is very hard to get, very hard to draw, so usually our sample is not representative. Well, this could mean problems in case of certain studies or in case of certain research, but just to make sure that you are not confused by this, most of the research that has been done by students are not representative. But you have to make sure that you know this, you know what it means and what representativeness means. Okay, the second one is reliability. Well, what does it mean for us? What is reliability? Well, your research is reliable if you probably want to do the research once again, you would get the same results as you got for the first time. So your research is reliable if you had probably done it once again, you would get the same answers. So it's reliable if the answers can be reproduced. And the validity, the last one, means that it measures what it intends to measure. So if you would like to research satisfaction, it actually does research satisfaction and not any other theoretical concepts. So everyone knows and everyone understands what your concepts mean. So after the keywords that we have to define at the beginning, let's look at the different steps of sampling. So sampling has different steps. The first step is basically to define who your population is. You have to define what people you're interested in and what characteristics of people you would like to research. And then if you have the population, then you have to define the sampling frame. So out of the population, who will you be able to actually reach? And after that, decide what kind of sampling procedure you would like to use, or with what procedure we would like to collect answers with. And if it's done, then let's determine how many people do you need in your sample. Let's determine an initial number that you might be able to adhere to or keep up with. So if you have that, then you have to determine which sample elements you would like to get. And usually, sometimes it depends on you, but sometimes you don't have an influence who is going to fill in your questionnaire. So getting the sample can actually be very, very hard depending on what kind of questionnaire you have. Okay, and afterwards, after you have the sample, of course you have to collect the data from them, which can also be, once again, hard, because if you have a very long questionnaire, they might not be willing to fill it in, they might not be willing to give information to you. So actually, sampling is a key step in having your own questionnaire or having answers to your questionnaire, but I think it's very useful to think of your sample before even you start the research, because this way you can maybe change in which ways you ask them. So if you remember previous time, we discussed the different methods how you can actually choose questionnaires or questionnaire types depending on different categorization. And if you have the sample already, then you will be able to adhere to that sample and maybe choose the best way possible for that specific sample or those specific people. Okay, and basically this is very theoretical, but you should remember that in case of sampling, you have basically two different types. So we discussed what does it mean to be a representative sample, and I told you that basically this is almost never the case, so it's very hard to get a representative sample. So we can differentiate between two types of sampling, one of which is the probability samples, and the second of which is non-probability samples. In case of the probability sample, then your sample will be representative of the population, meaning that certain characteristics that you are researching will reflect on the characteristics of the whole population. This would be the most ideal case if all the research would be probability sample, but unfortunately it hardly ever happens, or for us researchers who don't have a huge research firm or don't have so much data ourselves, it's almost impossible. But for example, there are some research which have been done by government or by huge research corporations. Well, for them, of course, it's much easier to get answers or get a sample which is representative. So probability samples are very hard to get, but of course it can happen, but most probably not by us individual researchers, unfortunately. So it means that this is a kind of sample in which each population element or person has a known chance of getting into your sample. It means that you can reach a wide range of people, everyone that you wanted, and everyone has the chance to actually be in your sample. So you give everyone the chance, and you feel that it's very hard. So let's say I want to research Hungarian youngsters' attitude towards online education. And in this case, my population would be all the Hungarian youngsters. And if I made a questionnaire today and I would like to ask them their opinion, probably I would send this questionnaire to those youngsters that I know or who are close to me, because I don't have the tools to reach everyone in the country, not even in the city. So in case of the probability sample, if I wanted to have a probability sample in this topic, then I should send my questionnaire to every youngster in Hungary today. So it's extremely hard. So that's why most of the samples are non-probability samples, but are done by individual researchers like us. And in this case, if it's a non-probability sample, the people who are in your sample don't have equal chance of getting into your sample. So let's look at your population. And in this case, if I would like to research the topic that I mentioned, I'm only able to reach those people who are around me, probably here in Szeged, not even everyone in Szeged. So it means that youngsters who live in Budapest or who I don't know have no chance of getting into my sample, even though they are in my population and they are in the population I'm interested to look at. So most often, this is what we use, this is what we rely on. And there is no way of ensuring that the sample is representative in this way, because not everyone's opinion counts here, because I can only reach a certain limited number of people. And there is this question which is usually asked by my students, that does the rise in the number of participants make the sample representative? Well, the representativeness of your sample doesn't depend on how many people actually participate in your research. So if you ask, so let's stick to my plan. I would like to research youngsters' attitudes towards online education in Hungary today. If we stick to this, then if I ask 50 people or if I ask 150, doesn't matter. None of them would be representative if I only ask those people who I know, because otherwise other people don't have the chance to get into my sample, so it still will not be representative. So it doesn't depend on the sample size, it depends on the sample itself, or the quality of the sample and different characteristics that people have in the sample itself. So it's very hard, but most often it's a non-probability sample. And here is the question of online questionnaires, because nowadays, most often if we do a questionnaire, or if we would like to conduct a questionnaire, we don't ask people who are, or we would like to ask people who are online, and probably that's the easiest way. We don't go with paper and pencil interviews, but we do online questionnaires. So in this case, if you do it online, you automatically exclude those people who don't have access to internet, who don't have that specific social media program or application. So it means that you exclude them and you don't give them the chance to participate in your sample. That's why if it's an online questionnaire, it is almost always a non-probability sample, meaning that the results will not be representative. So keep this in mind if you are doing an online survey or an online questionnaire, because it will hardly ever be representative.